Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Make a Good Mega Man Level Contest 2, or Magmal 2 for short. During the last part, I completed the two stages Neapolitan Man as well as Haunt Man. Now off screen, I decided to download and equip this custom costume of Mega Man for Battle and Fighters. This custom skin was created by Arbade. And unlike the previous set of custom skins that I've been equipping, the changes to the rush utilities in Sakugarne are relatively minor. In fact, the Sakugarne has no visual differences whatsoever. Anyways, on to the second place entry, which is The Stage Nobody Asked For by Entity 1037, with an average score of 46.2. This is Angel's favorite entry stage, and this was Pyra's favorite entry stage, though she changed her mind once she realized there was an issue with the second pathway of the stage, which I will get into once I do my second playthrough. Her current favorite entry stage is Neapolitan Man, and this is also my favorite entry stage of them all. Though this isn't the highest numerically scoring, that would actually be Neapolitan Man. The reason why this is my favorite one is due to all the ideas it presents, and the gimmicks as well. This has 2 energy elements and 2 noble nickels. Let's do it. Nice usage of the Mega Man 2 intro. And yep, the boss is Spike the Wall Man. Also nice remix of the Wily 2 team from Mega Man 10. And hello to you too, Entity 1037. You may recall Entity 1037 from their stage Citadel Basement from Magma 1, which didn't really appeal to me. But gosh, this is a major swerve. I absolutely love this stage. So we first start with these tellies in this blue environment. Also be careful about the up and down enemy over there. And there's our first noble nickel. Thankfully this is in the bottom pit, so we can go down over here. And here's the nut and bolton enemy. Kind of a nuisance in Mega Man 3, but it's used much better over here. Like for example here, we have an enemy spammy room, but most of these enemies are really easily dodgeable and we can just run to the right. Oh sure, there is some minor dodging involved, but it's relatively minor. And there's only one point in that room where you need to wait a bit. And in this room we need to climb up these series of Yoko blocks. And here's a checkpoint. Well, not really a checkpoint, but if you fall from the top, you'll at least fall down over here and not need to repeat the entire segment. In fact, you may remember something similar when one of the Entity's entry stages in Mega Man Endless. It's in fact very similar to that one. However, here it's a lot easier, because here there's actually a checkpoint, whereas in that version there was no checkpoint. In Entity's original entry version submitted to Mega Man Endless, there was also a checkpoint. Note all the spikes down over there. Now, a normal player will go, hey, let's go to the right. I suppose the red segment is a new section. But nope, it's instant death. It catches players off guard, but it showcases something really important. These spikes are not instant death. In fact, this is one of the main gimmicks of this stage. Anything blue is safe. Anything that's solid red, or red that is a solid block, is instant death. So that's a nice usage of force death to showcase an important gimmick of this stage. Most stages that are made in Mega Man that include force death are usually in poor design. But this is good design. Remember, those red things up there are instant death. Even the ladder. And here's another important illustration. Everything that's white color doesn't actually exist. So yeah, these are actually bottomless pits. And this is one of those rooms that messes with your mind a bit. Remember, the white things don't exist, the red things are actually spikes, and the blue things are the solid ones. See what I mean? If you don't pay careful attention, you may end up falling into a pit or hitting the spikes. So you can either go to the right if you don't use a special weapon, or you can take the upper route, which I will do. And if you haven't figured it out already, this stage's main theme or gimmick is that it's going to be using all of the most hated gimmicks and enemies from the classic Mega Man series, and some more general things like enemy spam and incorrect collision in order to use them well, and prove that they're not inherently bad, which I'll get into more when I complete this level. Now, there is a minor problem this stage. There is a minor and major problem. This is the minor one. Remember when I said earlier of how the red objects are instant death? It's specifically solid red objects, because I can jump right through them. Why, you may ask? Because these are top solids. Top solids are only solid on the top side, so if you jump under them, well, they won't act like solids, hence you can just phase right through them. This wasn't really well showcased in the stage, unfortunately. Probably should have showed it using Eddie or something, because otherwise players may think that it's instant death from both sides. Many players thought so, and this was kind of a misstep for the stage. A moderate misstep. And there's me not paying attention to what was going on. So let's try this again, shall we? And here I touched the top solid portion, hence why I died. Once again, that could have been illustrated a bit better, introduced in a better environment. And remember, as the red objects act like spikes, you can actually just bounce on top of them using the Sakugarne. As such, and jump over all these enemies this way. And the pathway loops up over here. I could go for that E-tank, but I don't want to risk it. And there's our second and final Noble Nickel. I wish this stage had more Noble Nickels. There are several logical locations where you could put it. This is another place where you need to know that the red objects are only deadly when they're solid. And now the gimmick of this section are force beams. This segment reminds me of several entry stages from Mega Man Endless as well, although they're a bit updated. In this case, the force beams are used as basically a timer, so you can get there fast enough. At least you have multiple tries to do this, at least 3 or 4 attempts, which I do really like. And that was me not paying attention. This catches a lot of players off guard actually, but the checkpoint placement of the stage is on the generous side, so it isn't much of an issue. Basically, this section is showcasing how the force beams can be used in better ways. Oh sure, I'll gladly use the M-Tank there. And now we have a spike drop segment. A pretty easy one. And now we've moved on to this green footholder segment. A pretty fun one, in fact it's one of the most fun parts of this stage for me, considering how well choreographed it is. I mean, just look at it. Look at how the movement patterns of all these footholders are working. And thankfully not all these green footholders shoot at you. Another nice touch is that there are no enemies in this segment, only green footholders, which means you can focus entirely on dodging the footholder attacks, as well as surviving here. I'm not sure what happened over there. Oh, that's why. In this engine, the footholders are solid at the bottom. They're solid on the sides as well. Whereas in Mega Man Maker, they aren't. So because of this, you can get crushed against each other. But you will not be able to pull off this segment in something like Mega Man Maker. The tools for creating the pathways for the footholders aren't advanced enough in Mega Man Maker. But using the Magmo 2 engine, Entity 1037 was able to create their own custom footholders to create this really well choreographed segment. Alright, let's try this segment again. This time with less crushing. And that's the end of this segment. A pretty good showcase of how useful the footholders can be, and put in a lot less annoying environment. And for this final segment of the stage, we have this Emmy mosh pit. And of course we get assaulted by these Apache Joes as well. This is another room that's showcasing how enemy spam isn't necessarily a bad thing. But that's the end of the stage. There's Entity symbol up there. So, time to face the boss, Spiked Wallman, which was in fact based on a meme. Now even though this boss has 3 health bars, its weakness is everywhere. And its main means of attacking are throwing spikes at you. Remember, the same rules apply from the early part of the stage. The white spikes don't actually exist, the blue spikes are solid but don't harm you, and the red spikes harm you. However, they are not instant death here. The red spikes deal 7 points of damage, or 6 points of damage actually. But there is the risk of instant death in this stage though, specifically by getting crushed against the wall with the blue spikes. Anyways, we're on the third and final phase, the hardest version. Here we need to be careful not to get crushed against the wall. And now we have a makeshift platforming segment. And now in this final segment we have to dodge all these spikes. Just using the tank just to be safe. A bit of a missed opportunity to not have spikes coming up from the bottom. But that was the end of Pathway 1. Overall, it was an amazing stage. If only this pathway existed, I'd give this stage a 9 out of 10, or 45 out of 50. However, there is a second energy element and a second main pathway, which is the main reason which brings down the stage for quite a few people. But I want to emphasize, the boss fight against Spiked Wallman was amazing. Pretty creative, and a pretty non-conventional boss fight in Mega Man. You don't usually find an entire room itself. Even though the boss had 3 health bars, the fact that any part of it was weak to your buster meant that you could focus more on dodging and just shooting anywhere. Anyways, we're back over here. In order to access the second pathway of the stage, we need to take what we learned during the first pathway and how we can bounce on top of the spikes using the Sakugarne. Or rather, any red obstacle. So let's move on forward. Remember, you only have one shot over here. If you die, you will not be able to access the second part of the stage unless you restart from the beginning. Restart the entire stage from the beginning, that is. On to the second pathway, where we suddenly have silence. But before I go to the boss, I want to showcase an Easter egg here. You can walk on top of the ceiling here, and there's an invisible maze over here. If I can figure out where the hole is.
Granddad!
Yep, we have a reference to Granddad. Although the meme has really cooled down over the years. Eventually, I will play the Granddad fan game by Smetis 2. Anyways, down there is the main reason that brings down the score of this stage for me. And that was a reference to the Ruby Spears cartoon. This boss fight, Pharaoh Man's Revenge. He has 3 health bars, but the main reason is, well, he's much faster and much harder to dodge. And the fact he has 3 health bars means that this is a crazy fight. You need to have super good reactions in order to survive this, without using an E-tank. Not to mention he has new attacks as well. I mean, just look how fast the Pharaoh Wave comes out. And of course, his contact damage is insane as well. It is possible to dodge all of these attacks, but in many of these cases you need to have insane reflexes. That's not supposed to happen either. That's only supposed to happen when Pharaoh Man dies. Now, I don't mind the concept of a super hard boss fight against Pharaoh Man. It's just the fact that it doesn't really jibe well with the rest of the stage. It's a huge difficulty spike. And unlike most of the other parts of the stage, you really need an E-tank for an average player. Not to mention there's instant death spikes here. And I do like the new sets of attacks. I just wish his Pharaoh Wave and some of his other attacks were slowed down. I mean, like that attack, it's really hard to dodge it. And adding to the problems is the fact that Pharaoh Man doesn't actually have a weakness. Let me showcase what I mean. Well, he sort of does have a weakness in the form of the Flash Stopper, which freezes him in place, and that way you can defeat him just using an E-tank. Yep, he has no weakness other than, of course, the Flash Stopper, which adds to the problems. It would have been pretty funny if one of his weaknesses dealt 7 or 14 points of damage per hit, but no, it doesn't, of course. And now the dialogue text box comes out correctly. Also, make sure not to jump into one of those spike pits. I know a few less players did so and were forced to start the entire fight from the beginning. There's a whole series of bolts, another bolt, and the second energy element. To summarize, my main problems with the boss fight is that it's a huge difficulty spike in comparison with the previous parts of the stage. If you're an average player, you'll have to burn several E-tanks in order to defeat him. Even if you use a flat stopper, it's a bit slower, and you may need to use an M-tank over there. Not to mention, many of his attacks like the Fair Wave, his Fire Rain attack, come out way too fast unless you have pretty fast reactions and already know in advance what's going to happen. Now, there is another way for the boss to defeat himself, but that very randomly happens. Fairman can mess up his jump and fall into a spike pit, instantly killing himself. I wish this boss fight better showcased another aspect of Mega Man that's not really well received. Bosses with more than one health bar, or rather Roadmasters with over 2 health bars. We could have made this a joke and make it so that the charge shot deals a lot more damage, or his weakness is super devastating. Or be even more creative, make it so that Fairman slowly loses more health over time. Or even better, every consecutive shot deals more and more damage, like the first Mega Buster shot deals 1 point of damage, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5, just as a joke to make it a bit more creative. But as it stands right now, it's a big blemish on the stage. It takes it from being a 46 out of 50 to probably a 43 or 44. Anyways, on to the judge comments. Three sections were kind of similar or remixed from Entity's Mega Man Endless stages, but I quite enjoyed it. They were easier than that version though. And I agree, this was one of the most creative levels in the entire contest, by using ideas and concepts in classic Mega Man that are usually hated. I didn't mind the Yoko Block segment, it was pretty fun. I did like how we had a checkpoint, and you had plenty of time to react to it. Most of the Yoko Block placements were in jerkish locations. Were not in jerkish locations, which a lot of Mega Man levels, even in Mega Man Maker, fail to do. I understand that, but at most make it like 1.5 health bars, or decrease the speeds of attacks, or make it so that Fairman drops a large life energy upon completing a phase. That would also work. I mean, Hot Man did that. And this stage does play pretty well with the player's expectations. Gutsman's asteroid did so as well, with the blowing up the spaceship at the beginning, Eddie throwing the rolling drill, as well as the Drillman switches materializing spikes and making your life more miserable. I did like the red, blue, and white lock gimmick, red being incident, blue being normal, helpful, and white not existing. And yeah, Spiked Wallman is a meme from, I think Mega Man dies in the end, I'm not sure though, could someone correct me in the comments please? And Fairman is a meme from the Ruby Spears cartoon, as referenced in his intro dialogue. And the foot-holder choreographed segment was amazing. It's one of the best segments of the stage, I'd say. And all the phases of Spiked Wallman are unique. And I don't mind him not giving extra lives because his attacks come relatively slowly and are mostly platforming and reaction based. This brings up an interesting point that I've been echoing throughout my Mega Man LPs, well all the Mega Man LPs I've been making of fan games, not to mention the Mega Man Maker levels. Specifically, there are a lot of bad ideas out there, but there are many more bad executions of ideas. Many people get hung up on the idea that there are a lot of bad executions and assume that the underlying ideas themselves are the problems. I see this sentiment happening not only in Mega Man but also in other game franchises and fandoms, as well as media in general. This limits the potential creativity and idea space of designers and the like, and breeds misconceptions of what works and what doesn't work. I mean, it even happens to other game concepts in general. It's alright to have preferences on what concepts we like. I know I do have quite a bit. I complain quite a bit of all the precision-based spike levels in Mega Man Maker, but it becomes problematic when we assign more objective quality metrics to concepts based on botched implementations. We need to get a better perspective, and this stage showcases how a lot of the ideas that we malalign in classic Mega Man aren't necessarily bad because they themselves are bad, it's because they're implemented badly. I mean, for example, force beams, they're utilized pretty well as a timer in this stage, whereas many of us got our malaligned opinions of the force beams from Quickman's stage. And unfortunately, there aren't that many other future classic Mega Man games which showcase how well the force beams could be utilized. This stage basically uses the tellies, boltons and nuttons, up and downs, Yoko blocks, death spikes, floors, force beams, footholders, fleas, big eyes, Apache Joes, and a meme boss, as well as enemy spam and false collision. For that alone, and how creative it is and how it decided to go into an area that many Mega Man levels refuse to do so, this easily earns my top spot of being my favorite entry stage of them all. Great work, Entity 1037. I didn't like your stage in Magma 1, I quite enjoyed your stages in Mega Man Endless, and I quite adored this stage in Magma 2. As it stands right now, I'd probably give this stage a 43 or 44 out of 50. If only the pathway to Spike Wallman existed, I'd give this a 46 or 47 out of 50. So in the next part, I'll be covering the top entry winner of this competition. Well then, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Toodles!